ขอบคุณครับครับผมจะได้โอกาสหน้าผม2-3 บาทเข้ามาแวะใหม่นะครับน้องพี่ครับพี่โชคดีนะครับจะได้เข้ามาหอมใหม่นะครับน้อง
When the time comes for the Kwang Festival, everyone here, whether kids or adults, gets very excited about it. They go out and collect beetles and buy beetles, and it doesn't matter how far they have to go. They still go to get them. They choose the best Kwang they can find, and then they fight them. All people, everybody in this town does the same. They all love it.
But Man's not just feeling the pressure of increasing competition. His wife Ming is expecting their first baby. And as luck would have it, she's due to give birth the weekend of the Kwang Festival.
Well, it'll be quite exciting because it's my first child. But I really don't want to miss the festival. I hope I can sort out my schedule. But if worse comes to worse, there will be someone who can look after my wife. And I can come and see her at the hospital later on. I really don't want to miss the festival.
Pyrat understands this obsession.
People who love the beetles will never hurt them. They will love them as much as they love their children and wives. There's a saying, love the beetle, then the wife. But I think it's just a joke.
It may be a joke to some, but to others, it's in their blood.
Will my son fight beetles? Of course, like father, like son, because he'll be growing up to see me fight beetles. Just like when I was a kid, and I grew up watching older people fight beetles. It's in our local tradition, it's in our blood. I think my son will be just like me. Why wouldn't he be? I think it's highly likely.
If he's interested, then it won't be a problem.
If my wife gives him permission, then it'll be okay.
But he has to go to school, and if he studies well, he can fight beetles.
I'm so lucky to have a great and kind wife. Otherwise, I'll be in trouble.
I don't want to be too stressed about it, or it'll affect the baby. He doesn't come home too late, so I'm not fussed. It's only once a year, but my husband stays with me longer than that. So I'm giving him a few days to enjoy himself.
And finding the perfect partner is just as important to the Kwang beetle. When it's time to get together, there's just no stopping the Kwang. Each mating session can last for over an hour with a mind-boggling array of positions. When you've only got 2 months to get it on, with as many partners as possible, mating develops a special sense of urgency. In the days following mating, the female buries herself to lay the eggs. In 20 days' time, these eggs will hatch, and next year's fighters will be born as grubs. But the female won't live to see this. Time is running out for the Kwang. The wet season is reaching its climax. Its life cycle is almost at an end. But an even greater threat to its future is looming. The Kwang is shaping up for one of its biggest fights in the last 200 million years. A fight against extinction. The growing popularity of beetle fighting brings its own set of problems. Each year, thousands of beetles are collected from the wild and sold at markets such as these, with no industry regulations and no species protection. There is a growing concern as to whether Thailand's Quang population can sustain itself. Surajai is an entomologist from Bangkok, specializing in the Quang beetle. He's monitoring the pressure the thriving beetle business is placing on the survival of the species. His assessment of the situation is grim.
After fighting the beetles, whether they win or lose, we should allow them to mate and release them into the wild. Because if we don't help conserve this type of beetle, the Quang will become extinct.
Each season, Surajai comes to the jungles of far northern Thailand to survey the beetle's breeding grounds. His journey takes him far from the reach of wheeled transport. It's in these remote, protected areas that the beetle has its best chance of survival. But each year, more forest disappears. In much of Thailand, people mistake the Quang as a pest species. They use pesticides to keep the beetle off their crops. Yet the adult Quang feeds only from the nectar of native trees. These Akha tribesmen, Nopon and Atta, are familiar with Surajai's work. Each year, when he comes to survey this area, they provide him with food and shelter. The Akha live in the lush mountains of northern Thailand. Being close to nature, they have an intimate knowledge of the animals and the plants of the jungle. They are finely tuned to the rhythms of the seasons. Originating in the Tibetan highlands, this hill tribe's forebears followed a migratory path south through China, Myanmar and Laos before settling here about 200 years ago. The Akha have kept their traditional way of life despite their displacement. The swing ceremony marks the beginning of the monsoon season and coincides with the emergence of the Quang. First-hand reports from the Akha provide valuable information about the changing nature of the Quang's environment. They see how the forest is changing and how the beetle population is in rapid decline. He tells Surachai how every year more and more people are coming from